Last time we regaled you with the phenomenon of Pokemon that are terrible, or if not terrible, leaning heavily on the flawed side, yet somehow manage to find viability in Ubers, even though they are generally bad in more standard modes of play, like OU or even UU. It's funny how that happens. The stronger the metagame, the better these Pokemon that generally aren't good get, but that's why Pokemon can be such a wonderful game sometimes. We're here to continue this vein of exploring the unphenomenal phenomenons. Join us in counting down 5 more terrible Pokemon that work in Ubers. Now again, not all of our choices are truly terrible, but rather unusual in how they work best in Ubers, despite not being good in standard play. However, we are indeed starting off with a truly terrible Pokemon that manages a singular spectacular feat. Koraidon is one of the most optimized weapons of Pokemon destruction Game Freak has ever concocted. It wields a ferocious dragon fighting stab combination in tandem with fire coverage boosted by the sun that it summons itself, effectively giving it a third stab, one that becomes even more powerful when Koraidon terrestrializes into a fire type as it so often does. Oh, and it gets better because the ability with which it summons sun is not Drought, it's Orichalcum Pulse, which brings with it the additional benefit of boosting its attack by a stunning 33%. More than that of Life Orb. It's packing the Xerneas effect while also summoning the weather it abuses. Koraidon is as meta-defining as it is metagame shattering. It wall breaks, revenge kills, sweeps late game, often pulling multiple duties simultaneously. Switching into Koraidon without losing a Pokemon or at least sustaining heavy damage is ridiculously difficult, as almost nothing can take on Koraidon's 3 hyper-powered attacks. Nothing is truly safe except Dachsbun. Yes, that's right, Dachsbun. The Pokemon can't even hack it in PU on account of being pretty much as nondescript and passive as a wall can be. Not good qualities to have. It's one of a million bulky fairy types with Wish. But Dachsbun stands out at base 57 HP. At base 57 HP, the wishes it passes to its teammates tend to be on the paltry side. Wow. Additionally, its mediocre base 80 special defense means it's not taking hits on that side of the spectrum all too well, while its base 80 attack alongside a sparse offensive move pool means it's not dishing them out either. Stab Play Rough is great, but it's not that great. The only thing Dachsbun truly has going for it is its impressive base 115 defense stat, and it's got body press, so it can at least use that nicely. But base 115 defense only gets you so far with base 57 HP, even with the excellence of fairy typing. Yes, it's immune to one of Koraidon's stab and resistant to the other, but that still leaves it cooked by the fire of it all. So what makes it different as a Koraidon answer from literally any other fairy type? Oh, just the fact that it doesn't get cooked by fire at all? In fact, it welcomes being hit by fire. Dachsbun's ability, well-baked body, doesn't just give it a fire immunity. If it gets hit by a fire move, it gets a +2 boost to its defense. Who needs iron defense when you can have the opponent do it for you? As a result, the subsequent body press becomes quite frightening. Countering the uncounterable Koraidon, passing wishes, hey, even if the wish is small, some health past the teammates is certainly better than none. What a niche for Dachsbun. Yeah, sadly, in reality, Dachsbun is not actually that good, on account of the fact that it answers just about nothing except for Koraidon, and also does just about nothing to anything either. Even if you get that boosted defense from Well-Baked Body, you're not going anywhere with Body Press in a world of Ho-Oh, Eternatus, and Arceus Fairy, among many others. Countering one of the scariest Pokemon in the game is great and all, but in such a high-octane modern environment, you must be able to do something back to the opponent, or at least wall more opponents. Dachsbun is so weak, even its quad super effective stab Play Rough never one-hit KOs a full health Koraidon. It does 99% max. You're better off with Skeledirge as far as Koraidon answering goes. A much better Pokemon overall, able to answer other significant threats and able to actually do something back to the opponent. Still, the fact is that Dachsbun shuts Koraidon down, harder than just about anything in the game, and that gives it the slightest of niches that must at least be acknowledged. Corsola is well and truly junk. It's so bad that even getting Regenerator couldn't save it, and it already had amazing tools before getting Regenerator. Stealth Rock, Recover, Stab Scald, Calm Mind, even another great ability in Natural Cure. But no, it's been untiered forever, because its stats are just so awful. Partial Rock typing, while useful, also tends to interfere with Water's hit-taking abilities through its added weaknesses, so that doesn't tend to help. Even getting a regional form that evolved into an incredibly specially powerful powerful and bulky ghost type wasn't enough to cast off that curse. Corsola's debut gen was no better, even all the way down in NU, which it was not officially a part of due to low usage. Its niche was limited, cursory, basically just existing as a rock type, which in and of itself can often be enough, or at least carry most of the weight, in a tier largely populated by not fully evolved Pokemon. So how on Arceus' green earth does this Pokemon have a niche in Ubers? Well, as a normal resist with Curse and 32 PP recover, it is able to stifle many key variants of Snorlax, and anything that can help handle Snorlax tends to have a niche. This does mean Corsola technically has the slightest of niches in OU, but it doesn't get used there because it doesn't take on anything else of note. Not in the way that it does in Ubers anyway, which is why it stunningly is better in the highest tier. Even if a far cry from good, the fact that it can actually exist at all is astonishing, let alone eclipse its quote-unquote viability from OU. What pushes Corse further in Ubers is the fact that unlike other sit in front of Snorlax Pokemon like Shuckle, it has Stab Rock Slide, which when boosted makes it unique in being able to threaten Ho-Oh and even a paralyzed Lugia. Why not use Rhydon or Tyranitar for this purpose, you may ask? They don't recover. Now, Corsola's damage output is truly pathetic. Even after a curse, Corsola has a mere 33% chance to one-hit KO a full health Ho-Oh, but with some paralysis spread earlier, as tends to be the case of the thunder-heavy GSC, it can potentially cause some problems late game. If not, well, that's not its primary goal. To simply sit in front of Snorlax is all that's being asked of it. After all, that's more than most Pokemon are capable of. Corsola is no metagame destroyer. In fact, it barely exists at all. Certainly not in serious play, but the fact that it has a legitimate niche, however small, is nothing short of miraculous. The superlative sequel. Quagsire is here once more to shut down the Uber metagame's insolence with Blissey-style ignorance. Quagsire is a poet who doesn't even know it's rhyming its words. We'd never call Quagsire bad, let alone terrible, but there is no denying that it is a Pokemon occupying the lower tiers, which makes it that much more satisfying when it stuffs some big box art legendary. Previously in Gen 4, it dominated Kyogre, but in Gen 8, it reached its apex as while in the PU tier, it answered one of the most outrageously broken Pokemon to ever exist, Zacian Crown, a Pokemon so cartoonishly over the top, it not only got banned to the Mega Rayquaza realm, it got the next-gen nerf treatment from Game Freak themselves. Quagsire, though, it was so good against Zacian Crown, it followed it into anything goes. Quagsire is unawares at the peak of its powers here. It ignores the +1 attack of Zacian Crown's Intrepid Sword, and it ignores any subsequent Swords Dances. Since Zacian Crown must hold the Rusted Sword in order to exist, forget any further boost from Choice Band or anything. Incidentally, this is why Quagsire couldn't answer base Zacian despite also ignoring Intrepid Sword, because the Choice Band base Zacian could run meant it 2-hit KO'd Quagsire despite its much lower base attack. But then again, it almost makes perfect sense. The weaker Pokemon, Quagsire isn't so great against, but the strongest of them all, that's where Quagsire is elite. Anyway, point being, Zacian Crown's got to do its damage to Quagsire unboosted, and it can only muster this direct damage too, because it doesn't even learn Toxic. Now, here's where it should fall apart. Okay, so Zacian Crown doesn't get the Intrepid Sword boost to its attack. The natural response to this might be something along the lines of, so what? As demonstrated consistently in Gen 9 Ubers, where Zacian Crown only gets the Intrepid Sword boost the first time it switches in, and to be clear, it is still nightmarish that initial go-around, even without a +1 to its attack, it packs gargantuan power. It's got Kyurem Black's base attack with base speed that eclipses Mewtwo. In Gen 8, it was so much faster than everything else that it easily got away with an attack boosting Adamant Nature to really pulverize everything. And it still had plenty of EVs left over to dump into its already fantastic natural bulk that went alongside possibly the best typing in the game, typing which gave it 2 ferocious stabs. Okay, so Quagsire resists the stronger of the two, the Steel type 100 base power Behemoth Blade, but it doesn't resist the Fairy type Play Rough, not far behind at 90 base power. That should be the end to it, no? It doesn't even resist both stabs. If it resisted both stabs and only had to withstand close combat or something, okay, that makes sense. But this is a Pokemon with base 95 HP and base 85 defense. How is it supposed to take powerful stab from base 170 attack? The answer? By some miracle of the damage formula, Play Rough maxes out at 47% against Quagsire. Quagsire and can do as little as 40%. Still heavy damage to be sure, but you're never breaking through Quagsire without a crit, and you're more than twice as likely to miss as you are to crit. With Quagsire wearing heavy-duty boots, you couldn't even enlist hazard pressure as support to break through it. Alternatively, with sufficient team support against hazards, the gentle Quagsire could equip a Rocky Helmet and actively punish Zacian Crown for attacking, while healing the damage off. Boots was the most reliable choice though. Quagsire was the real deal. It took Zacian Crown on like nothing else, while the community gathered the nerve to drop the Banhammer. Gen 3 Omastar is not a terrible Pokemon by any means. In fact, it's one of the very best Pokemon in UU. However, that's just it. It's decidedly UU, because in standard play, it just can't hack it. It technically has a niche as a late game Rain Dance Swift Swim Sweeper, but it doesn't actually get used despite being the strongest Swift Swimmer and even having spikes for team support because its typing holds it back so badly, preventing it from getting Rain Dances in situations where it's weaker, but far more dependable competition Kingdra would. Ludicolo is even weaker, and even still it is far better than Omastar, which all but doesn't exist in serious OU play. To use it there would be using a choice that is almost always worse, hence when you're playing to win, it is a terrible Pokemon. Suffice to say, Omastar is punching way above its weight when it enters the world of Deoxys Attack and friends, but make no mistake, there it is a serious, legitimate threat. Its full potential fueled and unlocked by Kyogre's permanent reign. It isn't a Pokemon to be spammed on every team, but it is a genuinely good Pokemon that sees plenty of high-level usage and success. It's not just a matter of how Omastar's rainy Hydro Pumps naturally put pressure on even Uber's bulkier denizens, supported by an Ice Beam to really make the Laddie twins uncomfortable, as well as provide a stronger hit against Groudon attempting to replace the rain with sun, and to ensure Rayquaza can't come in and ruin the rainy fun with Airlock. It's also how Omastar uses the switches it forces to support its teammates and its own sweep later on down the line. With Spikes, it is a sort of proto-Greninja, right down to its unimpressive bulk and typing that makes getting it on the field a challenge to be sure, but it is a challenge worth embracing, for the rewards are both unique and immense. Plus, it's not just Spikes, and Spikes don't do anything against the Laddie twins that rule the tier anyway. Omastar really guarantees its impact is felt through Thief, functioning like a one-time knockoff without their soul due. The Laddie twins will really feel the heat from both Rainy Hydros and super effective Ice Beams. A Blissey without leftovers is eventually going to collapse to pressure from Spikes and Rain Hydro, and opposing Kyogre will be similarly hindered. Groudon losing lefties means it's a major step closer to losing the Weather War. Beyond just supporting itself and its teammates through Thief and Spikes, Omastar is lights out late game because it does not at all care of Choice Band Deoxys Attack's mighty extreme speed, a foil of many a late game sweep, but not of Omastar, whose huge defense and rock typing means the moves bounce right off. These qualities also assist Omastar in pivoting into things like Choice Band Lugia's Aeroblast. Yes, it's frail, but it's deceptively good at finding entry points into opposing moves, not just off of double switches that are the usual go-to for attackers that can't take a hit, like Deoxys Attack itself. In a pinch, Omastar can even pivot into Choice Band Deoxys Attack Shadow Ball, which it's neutral against, and still be in shape to survive extreme speed later. Serious OU is beyond Omastar's reach, but it can be and is dependent on at the highest level of Ubers. Fun fact, Omastar also has niches in Gen 2, Gen 4, and especially Gen 5 Ubers, but it's at its peak in Gen 3 by far. Sticky Web's speed dropping of grounded Pokemon alongside limited distribution means it's the least spammable hazard by far, but its potential effect is game-breaking. Web teams are often seen as, if not cheese outright, cheese adjacent, because their specific game plan can go quite wrong in certain matchups, but it can also provide nigh automatic wins in many others. This is true of OU, and it's especially true in the high-powered world of Ubers, where the Sticky Web abusers can translate drop speed into KOs much more easily, especially when these beasts are enabled to run attack-boosting natures. As a result, alongside the biggest threats in the game, you will see on a fairly regular basis incredibly low tier Pokemon simply for the fact that they can throw down the webs. The role of Sticky Web user has varied, as each Pokemon listed has their own specific talents, but those talents ultimately are used to the same end. To make sure those webs go up, we can give a special mention to Shuckle, because it also has a small niche in GSC Ubers in a very similar vein to Corsola. It does no damage itself, but it completely and utterly walls all Snorlax variants, even the Earthquake one. Alolan Muk is, again, not a bad Pokemon, but it's not that great either. In its debut Gen 7, it was okay, but only that in UU, while packing the ghosts of a niche in OU that was specific and rare as all get out. As such, it's a bit of a shock to see it with a place in Ubers, but it could be argued that it was there that it did its best work. Flawed though it was perfectly designed to take on some of the most out-and-out frightening Pokemon around. Early Gen 7 Ubers saw a surge of Psychic spam, specifically Deoxys Attack's fearless Psycho Boost, fueled further by Tapu Lele's Psychic Terrain, which melted just about everything, even resist, but not immunities. Alolan Muk took 0 damage from Psycho Boost like any other Dark type, but unlike most other Dark types, say Tyranitar, it did so while not fearing Deoxys Attack's superpower thanks to its half-poison typing, giving it fighting neutrality. As such, it was free to pursue Deoxys Attack's Lights Out, and between its fairy neutrality and strong special bulk, often assisted by Assault Vest, it could pull the same trick off against Tapu Lele. Tapu Lele wasn't Dark weak, but the pursuit stung it hard nonetheless, punishing it much harder than it would punish Muk. And what's more, it often went beyond the still hefty pursuit damage compounded by Stealth Rock thanks to Muk's Poison Touch ability, which gave it a 30% chance to poison anything it came into contact with. This made its pursuits wholly unique and threatening, to be used against almost anything, even resisted targets. Yveltal and Xerneas became the most popular Scarfers in the tier, but they would be forced out by Muk, and while they took nearly no damage from pursuit, they certainly wouldn't appreciate getting poisoned. Speaking of Xerneas, though the +2 Fairy Aura Moonblast would sting, Muk could absorb 1 from full health and stifle its sweep with Clear Smog. Its utility was superb, and as such, saw serious use on high-level stall teams in tournament play. How else were they supposed to reliably take on Deoxys Attack in Psychic Terrain? Plus, had the amazing benefit of absorbing Toxapex's Tox Spikes, and on these stall teams, it had its lack of recovery offset by Wish support from its teammate Chansey. Sadly, once Ultra Sun and Moon came around, Deoxys Attack didn't quite fall off the map, but, well, it didn't take a hit so much as a wallop by the presence of the newly added Necrozma Duskmane, which shaped the metagame into its image and completely throttled it. And guess what? Not only do you not need Alolan Muk nearly as much in a world with less Deoxys Attack, you also don't tend to need it in the world dominated by Necrozma Duskmane, who will do approximately the same job as a million others and generally just being elite. Alolan Muk's niche didn't completely disappear, but it became much more specific. However, there was a time where it was a key, an important time in Gen 7 Ubers, despite not being all that in the tiers below, and we think that's beautiful. And that's it. The terrible Pokemon in Ubers tend to have a range. They usually fall into the category of being generally awful Pokemon that somehow manage to have one incredibly specific thing they do. But because they're generally bad, they don't actually get used in serious play. Yet the fact that they can do these things is amazing in general. Think of the previous video's Gen 4 Ariados for another example. Or they're Pokemon that aren't terrible, but definitely seem out of place relative to the general power level of the world of Ubers. What's most fascinating is how standard play, with all its bans towards balance ends, winds up being harsher to them than the comparatively no-holds-bar realm of Ubers. As always, let us know what you thought of these choices and what other terrible or at least less than amazing Pokemon you like in Uber. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out our previous video on the subject. Thanks for watching, everyone. And as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos. And thank you to everyone else watching as well. And thank you so much to our Platinum patrons. Thank you to Amphozenus, Alex Sable, Anthony Belval Renault, Bingleton, Daniel Isbeast, Funky, Glitcherton, Howl, Megamon VGC, Nurse Jake, Jack G, Pretzel SP, Spavoon, Skylaria, Soras and Croxon, Shiwei Miji, Stoneface Colin, Kiboflu for their major support of our videos. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.